Welcome to episode 17. And in a fun-packed agenda this evening, we're going to talk about Christmas in the USA and contrast it with the UK. We're going to talk about Columbus, Indiana, which I know you've not visited. And then we're going to quickly catch up on all the ramifications, political shenanigans around the recent or proposed change in the abortion law. Yep.
That's right. Excellent. And can I say Happy Christmas to you, Michael?
You certainly can, except you're a little early, Julian.
It is our Christmas episode.
It is. But I think what you're doing now, Julian, is being like the Americans. You're talking about the holiday season, which starts at Thanksgiving and runs into December. Whereas here in the UK, not really until we get to Christmas Eve are we really talking about the holiday season.
And of course, in the US, they don't say Happy Christmas. They say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And indeed, I have an old boss who, whenever I said Happy Christmas, would always chide me for not using the correct American words, which is Merry Christmas.
Okay. Are you looking forward to a Merry Christmas, Julian?
I am. Daughter number 2 is already with us, with her boyfriend, so boyfriend number 2. And daughter number 1 comes in 2 days' time. And she'll be joined by boyfriend number 1. So we're going to have a nice full house.
And are you going to have what I call a traditional US Christmas? And if so, what does that comprise?
We're in Florida, and at the moment it's really nice and warm in Florida. So it's mid 80 degree Fahrenheit. I think that's about 30 degrees centigrade. We're right next to the beach, so I imagine our Christmas will consist of some beach time, which I don't think is a traditional thing that one does in Britain at Christmas. Yeah, so we're getting ready for Christmas. I've been struggling to find postage stamps. I don't know whether you've seen this.
I did see that.
My local post office has not got any stamps, which I would have thought is kind of like a basic thing you'd expect for a post office to have.
Reminds one of the Monty Python cheese shop sketch, going to
That's
buy
right.
cheese, for our older listeners.
Americans send 15 billion cards every year and 1 billion packages, at least at my local post office. That was difficult to do because they had no stamps for people to purchase. The good news is, Michael, your Christmas card is winging its way to you. We did go to another nearby town and we have placed a stamp on your Christmas card and it will be reaching you in due course.
Julian, can I sort of update you on modern technological practices? Have you not heard of the electronic Christmas card?
No one reads it.
I read it, and some of them are really clever because you can get interactive graphics.
Yeah, well, I make the effort. I write a nice Christmas epistle.
You do?
Of the year in our household, and we have a nice picture. We spend a lot of time thinking about the picture that we're going to put on our Christmas card. You'll probably remember the Christmas card of us all dressed as Forrest Gump, running along the road, reenacting that moment from the film Forrest Gump.
I understand from a previous conversation we had that the family with assorted guns was at one stage under serious consideration for the family Christmas card.
We went to a state fair. Actually, state fairs we should talk about another time. We should put that on our list. I went to a state fair and they had one of these photo areas and they had all sorts of costumes. And one of them was a pioneer costume with all guns. And as a family, we had our group taken as American pioneers. That's when we first went to the US. But unfortunately, my wife overruled that card. I thought it was an interesting card and representative of our new arrival in America.
May have concerned the relatives back home in Torquay, seeing you with guns and trappings of, fair traders or whatever. I think, Julian, that wouldn't have gone down well. I think Lorna made a good call on that one.
She probably did. So US is a modern country. Many of the traditions in the US are borrowed from the UK and from Germany. So there are lots of things which are similar in the US to the UK. So things which are similar: presents, Christmas trees, meal, Christmas markets, Christmas music, which they play here from September, decorations, advent calendars. So all of those things are similar. Now, your wife, she likes a bauble, doesn't she?
She certainly does. And a Christmas market.
I think one summer she was over in America, and I went shopping with her in a Christmas shop which they have here open all year round, and she was steadily procuring a variety of different baubles for your Christmas tree.
And what is more, Julian, I can now announce that not only she loves her baubles, we have various displays. In fact, we have baubles from various parts of the world. So every time she goes to America, she buys a souvenir from where we've been. So not only on our tree, we now have a specialist area for the USA. Next to Scotland, dare add it, next to Scotland.
Right.
And then next to London, which I did quite said, well, we're talking countries and London, but she didn't. She said, no, Michael, this is how it's going to operate. So I just went along with it.
Well, that's good. So, and there's a whole variety of things. Caroling, Christmas cards, wreaths, stockings, Santa's grotto, eggnog, those things, very much part of the UK Christmas experience, very much part of the US experience. But there are some things which are different.
Okay.
So Christmas lights, for example. Now, I know this is getting to be a bigger thing in the UK, with people sort of decorating their homes in very fancy lights, but it's done to real excess here. And it's marvellous as you're driving in the dark and you see some of these houses, they've got 1,000, maybe 10,000 lights on them, really quite extraordinary. I love that. In fact, when all of the children are here, we will be going to Venice, who have they have a park which is decorated in Christmas lights. We'll be going to partake of that when daughter number one and boyfriend number one arrives. So, yeah, I think Americans do that really well. They open one gift on Christmas Eve. So that's a tradition here. So the bulk of them are opened on Christmas Day, but the child is allowed to open one gift on Christmas Eve, which I think is kind of a nice thing.
And I think that's the Eastern European practice, Julian. I think it's German or Poland where I've heard that's where they do open on Christmas Eve, one present.
I've spent a lot of Christmases outside the UK and the US. One thing we like to do is we like to spend Christmas in another country. And it is, while there are some similarities, there are lots of differences. So many countries have their big celebration on Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day. Places like the Philippines, that's when their big meal is. We really enjoy experiencing things which are a little bit different, because it kind of shows that culture is also local as well as being influenced globally. Yeah, what else do they do differently here? In the UK, one puts out some mince pies, a glass of brandy and a carrot for Rudolph. Oh. Even though Rudolph isn't one of the reindeers. So that's what they do in the UK. Do you remember that, Michael? And then you take a bite out of the carrot and you say, there you go, there's Rudolph, he's had some carrot.
Yep.
And you drink some of the brandy and you say, Father Christmas has been.
Yep. But you said mince pies. And I'm a little surprised because in the research I've been doing, Julian, are you aware the mince pies came from the UK? That's the tradition. But in New England are called mince meat pies.
Oh, are they? Yeah, so I was saying that in the UK, you have mince pies, a brandy and a carrot. In the US, they don't have that. They put out cookies and milk.
Uh-uh.
The second thing is they don't have Father Christmas here. They have Santa. It's a different name. They always call Father Christmas Santa, never Father Christmas. What else do they have here? They have gingerbread houses. Even though my children are very grown up now, we still get them a gingerbread house, even though none of us like gingerbread to make. And it's part of the traditional Christmas here. There's a tradition of making ornaments. So our tree, as well as having ornaments from different places around the world, have a number of ornaments which are made by the children in various different classes they've had. That's a big tradition here. In the UK, they have the John Lewis advert.
We do.
Which is a TV advert. What is it this year? I have missed that one, thankfully.
So have I. I have not seen it. It's been very low profile. It's about an alien who comes to the UK. I suspect at the moment there's several candidates for that, but no, an alien who befriends a little girl.
Aren't they on the red list?
Well, as you say, how did they get in? Have they brought COVID?
So they don't have John Lewis adverts here because John Lewis isn't a shop here, but they do have Coca-Cola adverts.
And I have seen the Coca-Cola advert for this year. Yes.
Have you?
We get that, yes.
I got some fun facts for later, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. They also have a number of Christmas towns, 50 or more Christmas towns which set themselves up as places for people to visit at Christmas time. And one of them is our own Mackinac Island.
No.
So that's one of the places which sets itself up as come here to experience the joy of Christmas. In the UK, they have something called a pantomime or a panto, which to me is like the lowest form of entertainment. I can't bear pantos. And they don't have that in America, thank goodness. But they do have Nutcracker Ballet. That's a very Christmassy thing.
And, Julian, in New York, Radio City and the Rockettes, and even more, Live Camel. Live Camel. Did you know that?
I did, yes. It's in my notes. They have the Rockettes and they have the Charlie Brown Christmas show. So there are various different pieces of entertainment which are traditional in the US, slightly different from those in the UK. Do you like a panto, Michael?
Oh, no, I don't. Oh, yes, you do.
Would you like to explain that to our American listeners?
I think Julian's been a little harsh on pantos because, by the way, first of all, they are, to be serious for a moment, a significant revenue source for most provincial theatres because it's about the one time in the year they can guarantee to sell all the seats.
Yes.
There'll normally be some celeb or some sort of comedian who heads it up. Most of it is...
Sorry, some celebrity from the 1970s or 1980s.
Yes.
One of the very few not imprisoned under Operation U-Tree.
And losing my track of thought now, Julie. A lot of it is around fairly loosely scripted, but with lots of ad-libs and audience participation. So, obviously, and given the average age of the audience is probably about 6 to 10, or the mum and dads, obviously great pride is taken in this audience participation. So let's for a second imagine that I'm in front of Julian and I'm talking to the audience and Julian is the baddie. Well, the audience will shout out, "Watch out, he's behind you." And then I say, "Oh, no, he's not." And the audience says, "Oh, yes, he is." And this goes on for 2 or 3 minutes, doesn't it, Julian?
It is just dreadful. They do something quite unusual in America, which I don't think happens a lot in the UK. Apparently, it's a religious festival, and they celebrate the religious aspect in the US.
Yeah, what, baby Jesus and the manger?
Baby Jesus, all that type of stuff. A lot of similarities, some differences. There are some people who have quite a different Christmas. So Jewish people have a Christmas tradition, which I think sounds quite fun. I think one year I'd like to do it. Their tradition is they go out to lunch and have Chinese food, and then they go and see a movie. And that's something which large numbers of Jewish people do on Christmas Day. Movie theatres are open here. So what does the UK have which the US doesn't? I had a few things here. So we have mince pies, which I love. I actually, on my trip to the UK in October, I bought a number of mince pies to take with me, and I'm looking forward to opening those in a few days' time. Christmas crackers, not a big thing here. We sourced our Christmas crackers. We're in the UK as well. For American listeners, these are, I don't know, they're things which you pull between friends, and then one person gets a prize and one person doesn't. And then within the cracker, it makes a bang, and then within the cracker, there's always a Christmas joke, and there's a little toy and a paper hat. So we like our Christmas crackers. Schools in Britain have nativity plays, something which is less common here.
And my grandson, Frankie, today was the donkey. The donkey in the nativity. I'm sure that's a great step forward on a theatrical career for him, the donkey. No speaking lines, though.
Okay. So front or back or both?
Both. It's an all-in-one donkey suit.
Okay. So what else does Britain have? Britain, it has to be said that Christmas in Britain is a week-long celebration, isn't it? It really starts Christmas Eve for some people a little bit earlier, and it really goes through a lot of people will have the whole week off between Christmas and New Year.
Yeah, I would say it's a 10-day holiday almost. 10-day holiday.
In the US, they're kind of fed up of all the holidays by then, so the next day after Christmas, things are back to normal in America.
I was going to say, so you don't have a public holiday on Boxing Day, do you?
No. Some companies have Christmas Eve off as a vacation day, but the day after is very rare indeed. But some, because they recognise that Christmas Day is an important day for family, they allow people to travel by giving the day before Christmas off. So in Britain, they have the Queen's Speech, which obviously America doesn't have a Queen, so we don't have one of those speeches. That's a very big tradition. At 3:00 On Christmas Day, the Queen publishes a pre-recorded Christmas message, and people sit down and they watch that Queen's speech on television. Television is a big thing for Christmas in Britain, particularly on BBC. There are very many of their best programmes they will save for Christmas Day when they know people will be watching it at home. The other thing which happens in Britain is they have Boxing Day sales, which is the equivalent of Black Friday in America. When they've eaten too much on Christmas Day, the next day they will go along to these stores and, some of these stores might have some goods on sale which they didn't sell for Christmas.
Boxing Day in the UK is heavy on sports, so football, horse racing, even hounds and chasing foxes. Very, very, very big on Boxing Day.
Yes. Do you want to just cover a little bit on chasing foxes? Because that's a strange one, isn't it?
It is. And men in pink but red jackets, they call them pinks, but red jackets on horses with a pack of hounds chase down a fox. Now, I actually believe today it's not legal to do that in most places, so they have to pretend it's a fox. But that's what they do, and they all have a drink before they go off, and it's jolly, and everyone likes it, and they have a big fisticuffs with the anti-fox hunters, so it's always a good sport, apparently.
I think that's a modern day tradition, isn't it? A big argument between the fox hunters and the saboteurs. And in Britain, a very important day for the music industry is Christmas Day. What is going to be the number one single on Christmas Day? That's a very big competition, isn't it?
I think, Julian, there's a couple of things that you've sort of because you've been away from the island. So one's about lights. Lights now are very popular. If you were looking at my garden now, I've got penguins lit up. I've got a fake snow coming down the side of the house. Big sign makers. Yeah, so lights have become very popular. And I was going to say, I am going to ask you at some point for your favourite Christmas film. But of course, when we're talking Christmas lights, am I not talking about National Lampoon Christmas Holiday and the famous lights?
Lorna watched this film for the first time last year. So last year we were down in Florida and they had some drive-in movie, and we went along to it. It was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and that is now her second favourite film of all time. She loves that movie and thinks it's very, very American. Okay,
well, we'll come back to another film in a second. So lights, I think, much more popular than you think. I think Christmas Day, Christmas message for the Queen. Now we've got more than 3 channels. We've got more than 3 channels now, don't you, Julian?
Yeah, that's right. I understand.
I mean, when we only had 3 channels, I think most people did watch the Queen. Now, I think most people don't watch the Queen. And I also think, and maybe this is a function of streaming, even the number one is a bit, because actually you don't have to sell too many records to get number one.
No.
And then when Simon Cowell took over Britain's Got Talent or whatever, the person who won that always won the Christmas. So it's nowhere near as popular as it was, I'm afraid, Julian.
Right, well, things change. Time moves on. So anything I missed out on British Christmas, which you think is very traditional?
You did, and I'm glad you didn't, because otherwise all that research would have gone to waste. But do you know what you gave us?
Brussels sprout. I don't know. What?
Turkeys.
Turkeys, yes, I did know that.
So turkeys are a big... What is the equivalent, I suspect, of Thanksgiving, that most people will have a turkey on Christmas Day. So a bit of research. So do you know why they're called turkeys, Julian?
I don't know. Did they think they came from Turkey when they never really did?
You're on the right lines. When the first Europeans saw them, they thought they were guinea fowl, and guinea fowl had been imported by Turkish entrepreneurs. Okay. So that's where that came from. Actually, William Strickland is credited with bringing the first turkey from the States to UK in 1526. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm going to... Are you familiar with the work of Charles Dickens?
Yes, I have probably read most of his stuff.
Okay, so you'll be aware of this little nuance in A Christmas Carol. When the Cratchit family initially are sitting down for their Christmas dinner early on in the book, and Bob is defending Ebenezer Scrooge, they're eating what? A goose.
That's right.
The following morning, when Ebenezer reforms and decides to be generous, he brings them a turkey, because a turkey was a sign of a much healthier, much bigger beast.
Right.
So, turkey's big thing in the UK for Christmas.
And we're not having turkey this year in big news.
What are you having, Julian?
Well, I'm vegetarian, so I'm not eating anything which has been murdered. But the rest of the family are having duck, I believe.
I would say turkey is something which is absolutely the heart of a British Christmas dinner. Pigs in blankets. Do you want to describe what a pig in blanket is, Julian?
Well, we did discuss quite a bit of the meal in the last episode when we were talking about Thanksgiving, but pigs in blanket is I think it comes from the north somewhere, doesn't it? It's sausages in batter. And I didn't really know it was a thing until probably 10 years ago, because my family had never had pigs in blankets. But apparently it's one of the big things in many British households. You have pigs in blankets, do you?
I'm not sure, Julian. You've given it a correct description. Because pigs in blankets typically are small sausages, like cocktail sausages, wrapped in bacon. So the bacon is the blanket.
Ah, okay. Yeah, well, we didn't have that either. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, you'd have trimmings of stuff in, roast potatoes.
But we did cover this at length in the last episode. So
we'll move on. Julian.
Let's move on from that one. I've got some fun facts for you, Michael. Did you know that Santa didn't used to wear red?
I did.
And the reason he wears red is what? He used to wear green and white.
I don't know the reason why he moved to red. Don't know that one.
The Coca-Cola adverts of the 1930s. Oh. Coca-Cola is obviously famously red, and they had him in red alongside their product. And ever since then, Santa Claus, or Father Christmas even in Britain, wears red. But traditionally, he wore green and white.
Of course, they missed a big opportunity there. If they'd only trademarked that, every Santa would now have Coca-Cola on the back, wouldn't he? Sponsored.
Well, possibly. Jingle Bells. Do you like the Jingle Bells song?
Not really.
You don't want to give a rendition to the audience?
Not even at Christmas am I singing.
Okay. Well, that was not written for Christmas. It was written for Thanksgiving.
Was it?
It's a Thanksgiving song.
Oh, didn't know that, Julian.
Did you know that Christmas Day used to be banned in America?
No, why is that?
Well, you know those no-fun Puritans. Between 1659 and 1681, they banned it. And indeed, it was rather an irrelevant holiday. 25th of December, 1789, that was the date of the first time that the Congress sat in session. They didn't celebrate Christmas. They had their first day in the equivalent to Parliament on Christmas Day. Right. And it didn't become a public holiday in the US until 1870.
Okay. I'm surprised, given it's a religious holiday, the Puritans didn't celebrate the birth of baby Jesus.
I don't think they were really big on celebration.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Thanksgiving is as close to a celebration. That's a celebration holiday, really. That's as close as they get. I think they're into working hard. I've got a Christmas joke for you.
Go on, then. From a cracker? What is a cracker?
It could be. It could be on a cracker. So what goes? Socks, 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 socks. That's a centipede opening his Christmas present. You got a Christmas joke for me?
No, I haven't. If I'd known, I'd done some preparation. I will.
Okay. So how are you going to celebrate Christmas yourself?
Well, the family will be here on Christmas Day. So my son's back from the army. We will pop round to see my grandsons and my daughter and open presents, and then come back and I will cook the lunch. And then, as you indicated, the rest of the day will be spent sat in front of the TV. We're going to Friends on Boxing Day. And then actually in the UK, we also celebrate New Year's Eve. So we'll be having a party on New Year's Eve with 6 friends.
In Scotland, New Year's Eve is a particularly significant holiday, isn't it?
It is. And my wife being Scottish means we celebrate it.
When I was young, and you were probably by then a fairly mature adult, the 1st of January didn't used to be a day of holiday in England. And then I think sometime in the late 70s, they made the 1st of January a holiday for the small number of people who would bother showing up for work that day. And then the Scottish, who had always had a holiday on the 1st of January, they made the 2nd of January a public holiday as well. So you're not going to see your beloved Derby County?
Not between Christmas and New Year, but fortunately they're playing Reading on, because the 1st of January is also a public holiday, as you've just said, and Derby are playing Reading on that day. So I'll be going to see them.
Okay. Well, I don't know exactly what we'll do on Christmas Day. I think we will be having our Christmas lunch. We will be spending some time on the beach, probably in the morning. There's an Amish village near to where we live, or where we are at the moment, and they have a Christmas parade on Christmas Day. So I kind of think we might go and have a look at that.
Okay. So, if we're coming to the end of this section, can I ask you my question about your favourite Christmas film, Julian?
Yes.
What's your favourite Christmas film?
I hadn't really thought about it, but if I'm asked on the spot, I would say it is Love Actually.
It's Love Actually, which one of my friends, Liz Allen, and she listens to this, is passionate about it. I must have seen it at least 10 times on Boxing Day when we go there. Her favourite, and we have a Hugh Grant fest.
Yeah. Do you not like that film?
It's all right. It's a bit smotsy, isn't it?
I think, but that's the definition of Christmas, isn't it?
I thought you might have said It's a Beautiful Life. I'm surprised. Where does that figure in your...
Well, first of all, the film is called It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Well, I'm almost there, Julian.
Yeah, it's a good film. I find it... you talking about schmaltzy. I find that is quite cynical in the way it plays with your heartstrings. I used to really like it, and now I just think it's a good film. It's a classic. And your favourite film?
Well, so I will give you 1 second. But did you know that when that was filmed, it was filmed in August in the middle of the desert in sweltering heat in 80 degrees?
I did.
So every time now I see it, I think of the poor actors. When he's running through the snow, and then he must have been absolutely sozzled. Right. Michael's favourite film, and one for Lorne to watch, given she likes National Lampoon's
terrible films.
Yeah. And by the way, as also a great follow-up, Bad Santa 1 and Bad Santa 2.
Oh, I haven't seen either of those, no.
Julie, absolutely put you on your watch list this Bad Santa 1.
It's really not my favourite genre of film, but... If you say that Lorna will enjoy it, then we'll go for that.
Do you like Billy Bob Thornton?
No, not particularly.
Boy, he plays out of his skin on this one. Absolutely great. So,
we'll report back. Let you know what I think of Bad Santa. So, anything else on the subject of Christmas?
No, I think we've covered it.
A number of years ago, I recommended to Michael that he should go and visit Columbus, Indiana. And it was after I saw the excellent film of the same name by South Korean director Kogonada. And it's a movie which is... It's probably fair to say it's not a box office movie, but it's about the son of a South Korean architect who begins a friendship with a young architect enthusiast in Columbus, Indiana. And I thought that movie was fantastic. It's a 10 out of 10 movie, and I really see one or two of those a year. And as a result of watching that movie, Michael was somewhere near the area, which is close to Indianapolis. And I said, Michael, you should go and visit this town. So, Michael, what did you think of Columbus, Indiana?
Well, to set the scene, I was journeying between Louisville and, as you say, Indianapolis. And it's a little way, not far off the I-65, so we popped round. Now, context, it was a Sunday afternoon, okay?
Right.
And I don't know how you describe desolate, without people, very quiet. In fact, we thought we'll go and have a nice lunch, and on your recommendation, Julian, as you know, I always follow your recommendations, I thought I'd check the place out. Now, I wish now I had done some more research before I'd got there, like I've done for this piece. But let me tell you, I've heard it has two descriptors. Do you know what they are, Julian?
Well, I've got a few. I've got the Athens of the Prairie.
Yeah,
is one of them.
And the next one, do you know what the next one is?
Well, National Geographic Traveller described it as the 11th best city in the world, and they described it as authentic, unique, and unspoilt.
Yes.
The American Institute of Architects described it as the 6th most important city in the US, just behind Chicago, New York City, and San Francisco. It has 7 national historic landmarks, which is a high number. I've got those descriptions, Michael. Did you not find that?
Yeah, well, no, but the other descriptor I did discover is a Midwestern Mecca.
Right.
Midwestern Mecca, which made me go to the dictionary to check how we describe. Because obviously we know Mecca is a place in Saudi Arabia.
It's also a bingo hall.
Yeah, yes, it is. Well, maybe this is what the dictionary says, that any place that many people visit or hope to visit. It does not apply to Columbus, Indiana, in Michael's view. So let's give a bit of history first of all, because, by the way, you know me, I always like a railway story. Do you know Columbus, Indiana, had the first railway in Indiana, going to Madison, arriving in 1844?
I did not know that.
It's got the oldest theatre in Indiana, the Trump Theatre. Okay, so by the way, I think we need to set context of Indiana as a state anyway. A gentleman called J. Irwin Miller,
yes,
who was the nephew of the co-founder of Cummins Inc., which is a diesel engineering manufacturer.
It still is. It's a very important company for the U.S. economy, and it's a very important company for Indiana.
He set aside a foundation that was going to pay architect fees. So there was this encouragement of architects to build buildings of note, yes? And as you rightly say, there's something got like 7 of the National Historic Buildings. By the way, I'll just give you a few of the titles of them. There's the First Baptist Church, First Christian Church, Erin Union Bank, the Mabel McDowell School, the Miller House and Garden, North Christian Church, and the Republican Newspaper Office. So maybe that will set the scene of the sorts of things you're going to see. Okay?
Well, can I tell you something else about this foundation? Because the foundation is very important to the nature of the town. As I understand it, what the Cummins Foundation does, it has this list of notable architects. These are people who are obviously architects who are still alive and important. They will pay the architect's fees for any new project within the town, plus they will pay 10% of the cost of building the building. And do you know why they do this, Michael?
To encourage buildings?
Because Cummins is based in this city. This city is, I mean, it's not a big city. It's not a city which most people would go to.
Population of 50,000, Julian.
What they wanted to do is they wanted to do something to the city which would encourage engineers from MIT to come and work at their company rather than elsewhere. So, and they said, look, our town isn't cutting it. What we need to do is have this town which is full of fantastic buildings by the best architects in the world. And that's why they have, I think it's 60 or 70 buildings which have been built under this scheme, which represent the best of modern architecture.
But did you Google them and look at some of the buildings on the famous Wikipedia or Google?
I did, yes, yeah.
So some of them don't look that good, do they?
They're modern architecture, aren't they? They're modern architecture, and some of them have, some modern architecture doesn't stick, does it? It looks old a few years later.
Church looks like a box with a tower stuck next to it.
Mm-hmm.
I did find one. I will put expletive in it because the mental health.
Well, hold on! Don't put too many expletives in, because otherwise I have to label the podcast as containing.
Well, I'm not. I'm going to censor myself. So the Mental Health Services Building, when you check it out on Google, has F***K, brutalism against it. So a pretty damning. It doesn't look good. The City Hall, it's got a smart overhanging sort of gap in the building, but doesn't look that great. I was even disappointed with the sculpture.
The Henry Moore one.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe it, Julian?
It's an arch, isn't it? It's like a wonky arch.
Yeah, it's big and it's ugly. Ugly, Julian.
Well, it's Henry Moore. It's very typical of Henry Moore.
Well, I'm looking at it now, Julian. It does nothing for me. Nothing for me. I mean, in this one, it says overnight getaway to Columbus. I'm not thinking like the Arch whatever. Or and to say it compares with Chicago, you have got to be joking, Julian. Chicago is an architect's dream. Yeah.
This is the American Institute of Architects speaking, not me. I've not visited the place. I can't give this one a number.
And you recommended it to me having not visited it. I don't know how you could.
Well, you said you were passing the door. Was there anything to see?
Yeah.
I'd just seen this film and I thought, yeah, why didn't you go and have a look at this for me? You've always given it very negative vibes, but it hadn't put me off wanting to go to it. When daughter number one actually has a job, when she graduates university, she has a job in Indianapolis, or it's headquartered in Indianapolis. So I suspect, when she eventually moves there, I will go along to Columbus and I will tell you my own thoughts. But I will be taking the walking tour organised by the Visitor Centre, to get an inside view of much of this modern architecture. Did you go and see the Zakharokos ice cream parlour?
No, we just drove round and didn't see any of the buildings. Now, by the way, let me backpedal slightly, because I don't want to offend any listeners who are from or near Columbus, Indiana. Having done the research now, I think I'd be more circumspect. I would try and identify certain buildings that I'd seen and find them. Right. I mean, I was just driving around and nothing stood out. I'm sorry to say. It could be I wasn't driving around in the right area, but I didn't think it's a place that...
That's fair comment. I mean, you were making a journey and you were breaking up that journey. I understand that. So there is a 1900 ice cream parlour called Zakharokos, and that has brass chandeliers, a self-playing organ, as well as delicious ice creams. So I'm going to tie you down to a mark here, Michael. You're representing both of us here. So mark out of 5 for Columbus, Indiana.
1, Julian. Julian, to a more serious subject. As you know, I like following all things coming out of America in the press and the media, and I'm hearing lots of heated debate by both sides vis-a-vis the proposed change to the abortion law. And I thought it might be helpful for our listeners for you to explain a little bit about what the change is, but more linking it to politics and religion and significance in the States. What do you think?
Okay, so when you suggested this topic on the last week's podcast, I was very nervous about this subject because this is a very polarizing issue within the US. Our American listeners are going to heavily dispute whatever I say, and they're going to disagree with it. As a result, we're going to lose listeners. It's also a very complicated subject. I'm going to try and choose my words with care and try and explain why this is such an important topic within the US. So the Constitution, which was obviously drafted in the second half of the 18th century, was silent specifically on abortion. So it doesn't mention abortion. And indeed, the Constitution indicates that it's up to the states to make their own decisions on the laws on health matters. So there's no federal law in place on issues like abortion. So by 1900, all the states had their own laws on abortion. And in fact, they were all pretty aligned at the time. Every single state prohibited abortion, as indeed they did almost everywhere in the world. And in fact, in the UK, I think abortion was legalized in 1968, which was around about the same time as some of the states started changing their own laws on abortion. So California was the first in 1967, and they made abortion legal for a very small number of cases like rape and incest and the health of the mother, etc. And then a number of states immediately after that, New York and Hawaii and California again, then started to liberalize their abortion laws. So roll on to 1970, and there was a woman called Norma McCorvey who was pregnant with her third child, and she tried to get an abortion in her home state of Texas. And it wasn't possible there. She went to an illegal abortion clinic, but that had been closed down in Texas. And she decided to sue the state of Texas because she believed the Texas law, which banned abortion, was unconstitutional. And there was a district attorney in one of the areas of Texas by name of Henry Wade, who essentially she sued. And her argument was that the abortion laws in Texas violated her right to privacy, which was given in the Ninth Amendment. Now, are you familiar with the Ninth Amendment of the Constitution, Michael?
No, I'm not, Julian.
When I had read the Constitution, I didn't really make much sense of the Ninth Amendment, and it reads, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people." And you can understand, when I read that for the first time, I wouldn't necessarily know what it meant, but essentially she said, hey, she had a right as an individual human being to privacy for her to be able to do certain things that she wanted to do. So that went through all of the court system, and eventually it found its way to the Supreme Court in 1973. By this stage, Norma McCorvey had had the child. She had put the child up for adoption. They didn't give her real name on the petition. Her name was given as Jane Roe. So hence, we have in the States, the 1973, the very important case, Roe versus Wade. That was Norma McCorvey versus Henry Wade, who was the DA of District Attorney of part of Texas. The Supreme Court ruled that there was the absolute right for women to have an abortion in the first trimester, the first 3 months of their pregnancy, and there was a limited right in the second trimester. Over time, that has kind of moved to, around about 23, 24 weeks, which is kind of the UK rule on abortion. So it was a convoluted route, but it kind of got to the same place as many other Western democracies. So you with me so far?
I certainly am.
They also argued that there were two other constitutional amendments which were relevant to the abortion issue. So one was the issue of slavery, that women couldn't be slaves. You were forcing them to be slaves. So if you forced them to have a child they didn't want. That's Constitutional Amendment number 13. Amendment 14, which talks about depriving a person of life, liberty, or property. The Supreme Court argued that those two constitutional amendments were relevant to the case of abortion. Ever since that landmark Roe versus Wade, 1973, there has been a very lively debate between people who were in favour of women's choice, or right to choose, which is one set of states, which have tried to make laws more and more liberal. So, for example, they would allow abortion to be paid for under Medicare, which is the state insurance for people who are not very wealthy. And then another set of states, which are pro-life, so protection of the unborn child, who have tried to restrict abortion. And many of those laws have been struck down by the federal and Supreme Courts. What has happened significantly this year is that Mississippi, the state of Mississippi, issued a law which restricted abortion only to the first 15 weeks. So this proposed Mississippi law has now gone to the Supreme Court for their ruling. Just a reminder, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. The composition of the Supreme Court has changed dramatically after the last few years. During the last president's reign, President Trump's reign, he appointed 3 new justices, all of whom were fairly conservative. So now on the Supreme Court, you've got 6 justices who were appointed by Republican presidents and 3 justices who were appointed by Democrat ones. And a number of people, as you remember, the Supreme Court, the justices serve for life. So they carry on being justices until they die or until they choose to retire. There's a lot of concern from liberal people that this composition might radically change abortion laws. They are reviewing this piece of legislation from Mississippi. In the last week or so, they've been hearing evidence from various different parties. And some of the questions from some of the justices indicate that some of the justices are thinking of allowing this proposed Mississippi law. The rest of what I'm going to say is conjecture, and it's just inference, because they're not going to rule on this case until June 2022. At this point, they're just hearing evidence. And there are 3 pieces of conjecture of what might happen. So the first thing that this court might do, they might overturn Roe versus Wade in its entirety and say it's up to states to develop their own law in this area. The second potential outcome is they may say do you know what? We're okay with this Mississippi law. We're not going to disallow it, but we're also going to keep Roe versus Wade. And then the third potential outcome is they will strike down the Mississippi law and say, we're going to keep Roe versus Wade in place. Now, many people think the last option is unlikely given the composition of the court and some of the things that the court members are saying. Now, you asked earlier on in your question, what are the implications? So if you have option one, where they overturn Roe versus Wade and states develop their own laws, then in that situation, you're going to have 20 states, around about 20 states, who are likely to restrict abortion more than today. Those 20 states have about a third of all of the US's abortions. So I guess women who were pregnant and didn't want children in those states would either travel elsewhere to get an abortion, have an illegal abortion, or maybe choose to have the child. That's implication from outcome one. Implication from outcome two, where you allow the Mississippi law, but you keep Roe versus Wade in place. Well, 4% of abortions happen after the first 15 weeks. So 96% of abortions happen in the first 15 weeks. And 2/3 of all abortions are in Biden states. So states which wouldn't adopt has to happen within the first 15 weeks. So you're left with probably less than 2% of all abortions. And again, some of those abortions, people would travel elsewhere. Some of them would have the child, and some, there may be illegal abortions. Those are the potential kind of short-term implications. But, my view is that people are so entrenched in this issue that this debate it's like Britain's membership of the EU. It's just going to run and run forever. They find difficult to agree a compromise and just move on.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's the legal background. What questions have you got?
And I agree with you, Julian, that this is something which is both serious and we should tread carefully. And I just think you and I, we're not going to pass comment on whether it's a good or bad thing. What I'm interested in is the politics. And I think you may have answered my first question. Is it clearly a divide between Republicans and Democrats, that they sit either side on the issue? And secondly... Okay,
can I answer that one first, and then we'll come to your second question. So, sort of is the answer. Pew Research, which is my favorite US research company, they have done lots of analysis of public opinion in this area. And public opinion hasn't really changed over 25 years on this issue. Around about 59% of Americans think that abortion should be legal in some or all cases. And 39% people think it should be illegal in almost all cases. And that hasn't really changed over the last 25 years since they've been measuring it. There are many Republicans who believe that abortion should be mostly legal. And there are also many Democrats who believe that abortion should be mostly illegal. More Republicans favor a ban on abortion and more Democrats favor a more liberal abortion, but there are plenty of people in those parties who have views different from their own party. What you don't have is for the elected officials of those parties. So if you are a Republican, it would be very difficult for you to get elected if you were in favor of allowing abortion. And similarly, on the Democrat side, it would be very difficult for you to be elected if you favored having stricter abortion laws. And indeed, in some parts of the country, some Democrats have painted themselves into this position that if somebody says, well, hold on, you shouldn't have an abortion at 39 weeks, then other people are saying, well, it's woman's choice. Up until the moment when that child is born, you should be able to have an abortion. So it's kind of like both parties, in terms of the people they elect, they've painted themselves into this sort of, you're going to have one position which is strong on one side and one position which is strong on the other. There are few politicians who argue for a compromise, which is, of course, what most people want. Most people realize that you've got to have some sort of compromise in this area. So does that answer your question?
I'm not sure you have definitively, but let me just check with you. I accept there will be many people who are both for and against abortion in the respective camps, yes?
Yes.
But actually what you're saying is, particularly in terms of elected officials, the majority of Democrats favour abortion, and the majority of Republicans are anti-abortion. Otherwise, they would, that election thing wouldn't please. So,
that is because the people who vote for those candidates are the hardcore Democrats and the hardcore Republicans.
Okay.
So actually, the politicians have very entrenched views. The people generally seem to favour more of a compromise. Well, let's meet somewhere in the middle. Let's have some sensible compromise solution. If I were a Republican and I thought there should be some sort of compromise, I wouldn't be elected as a Republican.
Okay. So my second question relates to sort of religion and the impact in politics. And I think we've talked before that, America I'm comparing with the UK, is a more religious country.
Yes.
I think we're definitely non-secular here. So, for example, the ability of the church to influence legislation is minimal. E.g., the only thing they do influence is the Sunday trading laws. They're allowed, shops have to shut at 4:00 or whatever.
Right.
But other than that, and even though the House of Lords has got bishops in it, relatively speaking, I was trying to think, I can't think of a piece of legislation which has been motivated by religious leaders, which has come to fruition in the last 15, 20 years. This particular issue, to what extent is it being driven by a religious agenda as well?
I haven't got the figures in front of me, but Pew Research also looked at different religious groups and their view on abortion. And there are some religious groups which broadly agree that there has to be some abortion. And there are other religious groups which take a very hard line on abortion. So, for example, the evangelical churches are very strongly against abortion, whereas the Catholic churches are more in the middle, and then you get the more moderate Protestant churches, which broadly favour some allowance for women to have abortions. So it's not religion as a whole, it's particular religious groups. In America, evangelical churches are very popular, and it's the evangelical churches which are growing in popularity.
And would you say they are the ones sponsoring this legislation? I mean, the reason I say that, Julian, because from a UK perspective, when it's reported, almost certainly the people they interview are people from evangelical churches who are actually passionate around this should not be allowed. So it comes over very strongly driven by religion. Is that true, do you think?
The Republican Party relies a lot on the evangelical vote and getting the evangelical vote out. And the evangelical vote, their most important issue appears to be abortion. So I think that the evangelical churches are the ones which are driving much of this debate. But the difference between America and Britain, in Britain, almost no one goes to church. In America, most people go to church. Yeah. And the evangelical churches are strong. To me, I can understand both sides of the argument here. I can understand people who say, look, killing life is wrong. I can understand that issue. Don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand it. And I can also understand the issue of someone saying, look, we don't want unwanted children in the world, and you have to have some allowance for abortion. Both arguments seem quite reasonable to me. But what we have is we have two sides who will only listen to their side of the argument. Mm. And for our American listeners, I mean, you probably stopped listening a long time ago on this topic because you hear it all the time in the media. In Britain, abortion is just not an issue. No. Only once have I ever heard anybody in politics really talk about it as an issue. It was put to bed a long time ago. There was a compromise which was agreed, and the only thing which is occasionally revisited is the number of weeks that it should be restricted to.
And interesting, you talked about the Catholic Church having a position of there would be certain circumstances. They were the chief proponents against abortion. And today, the only real issue is in Northern Ireland, where you've got strong sectarianism around abortion law. You're absolutely right. It's just not on the UK agenda, which is why I think there's been this fascination of this particular piece of legislation coming to prominence and then reported in the UK, because it's not something we would commonly think as almost being, I think there's a consensus that you need abortion. As you rightly say, there may be some debate about when it takes place, but overall, there isn't a before and after debate. But now to lighter matters. And I'm going to have to first of all go to Marilyn. She sent me a question, Julian, which I hope I was going to pull up in a second, but I can't find it. Oh, I know what it is. Marilyn, who's in the UK, said she didn't understand the US foods mentioned on Thanksgivings. Which ones do you think she was referring to?
Michael, it's Thanksgiving, not Thanksgivings.
Thanksgiving, it's all...
Okay, so I think the three foods that I mentioned, which were different from the ones that Marilyn would be used to in the UK, are green bean casserole, creamed corn, and creamed spinach. So let me go through each of those in turn. So green bean casserole, it's odd because I like all the ingredients of a green bean casserole, but I don't really like green bean casserole. So the ingredients are green beans.
You don't say.
Yeah. Fried onions.
Yeah, I like them.
And mushroom soup, particularly of the Campbell soup variety. So those are the ingredients. And I like all of those individually, but when put together, I'm not a big fan of green bean casserole. It's a little bit like, before I was a vegetarian, I used to like meat pies and I used to like custard, but I didn't like both of them together. Yeah, so that's what green bean casserole is, but try it yourself and make your own judgment about one of the most popular Thanksgiving sides. The second one is creamed corn. This is very popular in the US. Corn is very popular in the US. And they have these cans of corn, which is mixed with the sort of soapy liquid and milky residue from the production of the corn. I much prefer normal corn.
And can I just double check, Julian, when you call back corn, you mean sweet corn?
Sweet corn, yes.
That's what we call it in the UK, sweet corn.
Sweet corn, yeah, they call it corn here. When you say sweet corn in a supermarket, they look at you as if you're mad. Yeah, it's called sweet corn in the UK, called corn in the US. So yes, this sort of creamy corn, and I don't much like it. But very popular here, particularly in the South. And then the third one, which I do like, creamed spinach. That is spinach, butter, onions, garlic, milk and cream cheese and parmesan. And that's all mixed together. And I think that's actually quite nice. So I hope that answers your question, Marilyn.
And not good for the cholesterol, I would imagine, Julian, that one.
I imagine that one's not good for cholesterol, no.
Okay, but that's very good. That's good. And now, do you want to give the three scores, by the way? So the last one was your favourite, out of 5.
Oh, yeah. So creamed spinach, 4 out of 5. Creamed corn, 1 out of 5. Green bean casserole, 1 out of 5.
Perhaps you can test them and send us your scores, and we'll report on the scores.
Now, I had one thing for you, Michael.
What's that, Julian?
Have you heard of Let's Go Brandon?
No, I haven't heard Let's Go Brandon. Who is Brandon?
Well, let me tell you the story, and then you'll find out who Brandon is. Let's Go Brandon is an insult to Joe Biden.
Oh, right.
And it is, it's a little bit like Maggie out. You know, it's one of those sort of slogans which is
Maggie Thatcher, Milk Snatcher. You remember that one?
Maggie Thatcher, Milk Snatcher, another one, yeah. So, yes, it's kind of like a polite insult. There was NBC, which is one of the TV channels here, were covering NASCAR. And there was a driver called Brandon Brown who won the Talladega Super Speedway. And the crowd started shouting a slogan, which I can't say without losing our family-friendly rating. But essentially, they were shouting, expletive, the one which begins with F, expletive, Joe Biden. And the commentator said to the audience on TV, the crowd are shouting, let's go Brandon. When clearly, everyone on television could hear clearly that they were shouting something else. And this has become a G-rated rally call for the Republicans. There are T-shirts everywhere. There are songs, a number of songs which are being produced called Let's Go Brandon. Yeah, so that's what Let's Go Brandon means. And it's become very common.
I have a disconnect, Julian. So they're watching NASCAR racing. Cars go round and round. Brandon is doing very well. He wins that. why did they suddenly start thinking about Biden and shouting obscenities at him? What were they doing?
People who like NASCAR tend to be more rural folk.
Yeah.
And more rural folk tend to support Republicans. And they knew this was on TV, so they started shouting, expletive Joe Biden. The commentator thinks, can't allow that to go on air. Let's pretend they're saying, let's go Brandon, and then catches a public concern. And now, in Congress, you have politicians who will say, let's go Brandon. And everyone knows what they mean, but they can't really criticise someone for saying, let's go Brandon.
Of course, in the UK, Julian, when the microphones pick up crowd chants, and some of them are not necessarily aimed at politicians, but, question the parentage of the referees or the players.
Right.
The commentator has to say, he says, I apologise to our viewers if you heard some, and various words like agricultural language or, inappropriate or adult language.
NBC say they're now going to use this technology which subdues crowd noise when they're using expletives.
As we know, what happens in the States comes to the UK. So I look forward to the opportunity where some football crowd in full voice say, let's go, I don't know, Jeff Astle, and they refer to Boris. The next edition, I believe, is a present for Michael. So I'm eagerly looking forward to what's in this present, Julian.
Good.
Okay. I hope by the next time you will have persuaded your beloved to have seen my favourite film. And I know if she likes Chevy Chase, she will love Billy Bob. Okay?
Excellent.
So it's Happy Christmas from me, Julian.
And it's Happy Christmas from him.